Hey everybody, what's going on? I want to talk about Verde today. Verdehile, however you say it. In the fusion hexagram, he's the fire vampire, and now he's fusible and very important. But he's kind of an interesting champ because he's got a bit of a progression in the way that you're going to approach building him, depending on where you're at in the game. And I wanted to talk about this today because I sometimes will see people talking about how they're not seeing why he's good or they think he's overrated. And I think what could be happening is perhaps a newer player is asking in the chat or something how to build, and maybe people are giving that player the wrong build for the stage they're at in the game. Okay, and that'll make more sense as we go through in this video and talk about what we're doing. But he has quite a progression from the time that you fuse him to the time that you build Tricaru. He's going to be built a few different ways between Fusion and Tricaru, okay? So let's talk about that. We'll start on the free-to-play because my free-to-play version is more in the early game phase that we're going to be building him. And then my main account has him built for Tricaru. So let's talk about the journey. Let's talk about how to approach this and make sure that you're getting the most out of him that you can. When you fuse him, the reason you're fusing him is probably to work on your Dragons team, right? He's a popular candidate for a Dragons team. He's got a great speed lead for dungeons. Excuse me. He's got 2 skills that are 2 hitters. Nothing particularly fancy about him. If he leeches a little bit of HP on the A1, and then here he gets a crit rate bonus, but that doesn't really matter. And then the passive is his real claim to fame, the speed lead and the passive. Every time he critical hits, he increases the attack bar of all allies by 20%. Both of his skills are 2 hitters, which means every time he gets a turn, if you've got him built right, he's boosting your team's turn meter by 40%. That's insane. That is so many extra turns before the enemies get their turns. That it makes it a lot easier to do things that maybe otherwise you would not be able to do. So that's why he's so popular for Dragon, because Dragon is a tough dungeon. There's a lot of damage coming at you, even in the waves. The crystals are very dangerous. That Zyros hurts. The Dragon, the boss, does a lot of damage. So getting a lot of extra turns gives your healers more opportunities to get the team in a position to take that next hit. It also gives your damage dealers an opportunity to take out some of the threats before you take another hit from everybody. Right? So Verde's very important. He's incredible. He's very, very useful. It's really dope that they added him to the fusion hexagram because he didn't used to be a fusion champ, and it was real brutal for people that didn't have him. So really cool that they made him a fusion. And you can just fuse skill ups for him as well if you wanted to get more damage here. The cooldown doesn't matter. Now you can skill him up. Back in the day, you couldn't skill him up because I don't think this used to be a 2-hitter. So you'd skill him up until you were at a risk of getting the cooldown, and then you would stop because you wanted him to A1 more than A2 because A1 was a 2-hitter. A1 is not. That's just a random tidbit of information that's not important for what we're talking about. But anyway, let's talk about how to approach building him when you fuse him and you're working your way through Dragon, okay? If you have a violence set for him, violence the way to go for sure. He's giving your team 40% turn meter per turn. If he violent procs, that's 80%. If he happens to get 2, it's a whole new turn completely from scratch for your entire team, okay? So violent is definitely the way to go. If you don't have an extra violent set, there's a couple of different things you could do. What I did on my free-to-play, because I didn't have an extra violent set, was I put him on Swift and I made him as fast as I could make him, which is not necessarily the most efficient way to start a fight, but through the fight, it's fine, okay? And what I mean by that is, if you have him slower than everyone else on the team, then the fight starts, everyone on your team gets a turn, Verde comes in behind and gets them closer to their second turn. So it sometimes can let you steal the second turn before the enemies get to go once. If you have him on Swift and going fast, in most cases, your team probably would have gotten the first turn anyway. So that first turn's kind of wasted, right? He's filling up turn meters that are probably already full, not doing you a lot of good at the beginning. But then as the fight goes on and he continues the cycle, he's going to get you some extra turns, okay? So Swift is not the most efficient way to go, but you've probably got a handful of decent Swift runes because you've been farming giants for a little bit by the time you fuse him. You can probably keep him alive. And again, having him go a bunch ultimately is helpful. Not the most efficient way to start a fight, though. In the early game, whatever set you put on him, again, violent if you got it, it's important to keep him alive. So in my case, I've managed to get him on violent. So we went HP percentage slot 2, crit rate slot 4, and then in a perfect world, I would go HP percentage here instead of defense percentage, because especially in Dragons, when he catches a defense break from one of the crystals, he's in real danger having to rely on this defense. I would really prefer that this be HP percentage, but it just can't be right now. So my recommendation to you is HP percentage for slot 2 and 6 and crit rate for slot 4. You really want him at 100% crit rate. I know that it seems like if you get it high enough, it's fine. You really, really want to push for 100%, not 99. You really want to try to get this number red so that he crits every time he touches somebody. 99%, you'll be amazed at how often he doesn't land a crit, okay? So just fight for that extra 100, that extra percent, get him to 100%. Going crit rate slot 4 really makes that easy. That's 58% of it right there. If you get a blade set as your secondary set, that's another, is it 12 or 15 from a blade set? 12. So that puts you at 70. Then you only need 30% crit rate in your subs. That's not that hard to do, okay? So I would recommend starting off with crit rate slot 4, HP percentage here, violent if you got it. If you're going the swift route, go speed slot 2, just to really get the most of having him be fast. Otherwise, just use what you got. Just use what you got. Worry about getting his crit rate to 100. Worry about getting his HP up, okay? Now, as you progress through and you start to settle into dragons a little bit more, maybe you start to get the violent runes, maybe you start to get some better rune quality. Over time, you're going to be able to start transitioning him into a little bit more damage. So what I mean by that is 2, 4, 6. Over time, maybe you get to a point where you can go kind of hybrid and you can go HP percentage in one of these slots and attack percentage in the other slot. That way you add a little bit of damage, but you still keep him in a situation where you can keep him alive. Because remember, he's landing a crit every time. So a little bit more attack is going to go a longer way than it would ordinarily. So maybe you able to get him in attack percentage in one of these slots. Then maybe over time your rune quality increases to a point where you can get him on crit damage slot 4 and find your crit rate elsewhere. Right now that little bit of extra attack you put on him goes even a longer way. And then over time, maybe you get to a point where you can have him on attack percentage in slot 2 and 6, crit damage slot 4, and still keep him alive. Maybe your team is improved enough where your support puts him in a position to be able to stay alive. And then eventually you're going to have the Tricaru version set up. Now, if you want a guide for Tricaru to get that team working, I'll card to it up there. I did a pretty in-depth guide on that about, how to get everybody rolling, what stats you need to hit, kind of how to make it happen. Kind of a tough build, but when you're done, he'll look like this, right? He's on Rage Blade, attack, crit damage, attack, and we've got some decent stats here. We've got a ways to go. I'd like to get more damage on him so I could speed my team up a little bit, but this is, it's 100% success rate at this point, which is always the most important thing to start with. Then we worry about speed as we go. So this is kind of where you'll arrive with him. And then if you want to do things with him in RTA, there's different ways to build him in RTA, and that's not really something I think we'll worry about for this video. But as far as PvE stuff, that's kind of the progression. When you get him, you're going to build him a certain way and utilize him, and then you're just kind of let him evolve as your rune quality changes, and then eventually you'll arrive here at Tricaru Verde, and this will be, I don't reckon I'm going to change him for a while. I reckon this is going to be what we do for a while, other than like make improvements on what he's wearing. As far as his artifacts go, obviously in Tricaru, if you can get co-op damage, I feel like I might have some new artifacts for him. Damage dealt on fire, co-op damage, additional damage, stuff like that's going to be great. Otherwise, additional damage to fire is going to be helpful because you're probably using him dragon. Additional damage based on certain stats is going to be fine. Damage taken from fire will be helpful, like less damage taken, stuff like that. And then as the main stat, gauge it by where you're at in the game and what he's looking like. Mine can afford to have the attack percentage there Whereas maybe if yours is still dying a little bit, maybe you give him HP percentage on the artifacts. I don't even have a type one for him. So, those you just kind of play around with, use what you got. It's going to be a while before you have specific ones to hunt down to put on him. You just fill him in with whatever you got for now. And by the time it's time to worry about it, you'll kind of know what you're looking for, I would imagine. So that's it. That's the kind of journey of fusing and building your Verd. Start him out with survivability, and over time evolve him into damage, and then eventually you'll get him to a point where he's Tricaru ready. And again, if you want to check out the guide for Tricaru, I carded to it up there. Otherwise, I reckon that's pretty much it. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully I covered everything. If you have any questions, drop them below or hop in my Discord and holler at somebody. If you have any other tips for Verd that you want to drop, I would be interested to hear them. Maybe if you're using him in RTA a lot, let me talk about the build. I'd be interested to hear some different builds people are using for RTA for Verd. And I reckon that's it. I'm gonna get out of here. Hope it was helpful. Appreciate y'all.